I am joined today by Becca Spencer. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on your podcast.
You are very welcome, and a fellow Brit. It's always nice to always nice to speak to a fellow Brit.
Agreed.
Did you always know that you were going to be a marketer? Was that always the thing that you kind of had in your mind in sort of the latter stages of school and going on to study?
Yeah, so I was always in the creative space. I was an artist. You would catch me in the art room, was the art prefect, cleaning all the brushes. So I loved the creative side of things. But I actually went on to do graphic design at university. So it wasn't until I got into the workplace that I realized I wanted to go down the marketing route. I just kind of saw what everyone else was doing and thought, wait, that's for me. So I moved into that space pretty swiftly and got a graduate scheme in marketing. And then it led me here today.
Cool. And I guess you've still, still obviously have those creative elements in there, so
Yeah.
it's not completely lost to you.
No, no, it's actually been really good to have that graphic design background, especially when briefing in graphic designers. I understand what they're going through. So
Yeah.
it's been really good and really helped my career as well.
Do you still keep the art as something you do in your free time?
Absolutely. Yeah. When I'm not marketing, I'm arting. So I always joke and I say I'm a marketer by day and an artist by night. And I stick quite true to that. But yeah, I do a lot of art on the side as well.
Nice, I like it. So those kind of first few years of your career, or actually probably a few more years than that, but spent in the UK. Tell me about that. Tell me how that was for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started off in the event space and I was working in business and franchise events. And that's when I kind of ended up in marketing. I started off as a graphic designer and then I ended up going down the marketing route and just absolutely fell in love with it. And I always kind of stayed in that event space and I ended up at the Jockey Club, who run some of the biggest horse racing events in the UK, which are the Grand National, Cheltenham Festival, and the Derby. So I had a really good opportunity to be around something I love. I actually love horses myself. So it was a
Oh,
brilliant tie between
perfect.
the two as well. And I was there for the last few years. I think it was around 4 or 5 years. I was there before moving over to Australia and basically went from being an all-round digital marketer to going into the email marketing space. And that's where I really grew and developed and yeah, shone in the email marketing space and fell in love with that side of marketing, more the retention marketing side and life cycle marketing.
Nice. And you mentioned there that once you sort of got your first taste of marketing that you really fell in love with it. What was it about marketing? What was it that kind of really, I guess, resonated with you in those early days?
I think it was a mix of the strategic and the creative. Because as much as I'm a creative and I love creativity, I like having a reason for it as well. And I think you could piece the two together. And I'm a bit of a storyteller myself, and I feel like marketing is storytelling, really.
Mm.
I know maybe we get that message of it's a mix between like a sales and a creative role, and it absolutely is to an extent, but I feel like the storytelling part is really key, and I absolutely love that, and that's what really drew me in, and I felt like it could really test a lot of my skills and develop a lot of my skills. And yeah, that's why I kind of fell into that space and I just grew and I saw all the potential and opportunity in the marketing space and went from there. So I'm glad I made the move. As much as I love design, I'm really glad I made the move.
Yeah. And what prompted the desire to want to move to Australia? How did that come about?
That has been a pipe dream for a long time. I think they talk about the Australian dream. And yeah, I very much had that. So I actually traveled here as a backpacker quite a long time ago now. I won't mention the year, but traveled from the East Coast to Adelaide, did all the key spots, absolutely fell in love with it. Just love that way of life. And I had a few interesting jobs while I was working in Australia and backpacking. Again, I worked in the horse racing industry for a little bit. I worked for Gay Waterhouse as a stable hand, so very
Oh, cool.
far away from my marketing career. But I went back to the UK after a year and just really missed it. That's when I got my job at the Jockey Club, which was a dream job. I absolutely loved it. and just knew that one day I would be back here. I just felt a real tie. And my partner happens to be from this side of the world as well, not Australia, but New Zealand. And we made a decision during the pandemic that we really just wanted to come back over and just give it a go. And been here now for just over 2 years. It's absolutely flown. But yeah, fell in love with the place again, and so nice to be back.
It's funny, isn't it? It's very similar for me actually. I came here on my gap year as a 18-year-old. I had my 19th birthday in Byron Bay actually,
Love
so
that.
that really is going back for
Yeah.
for me much further back than yours. But yeah, it's funny. I was the same. I just always had this sense that I would come back and that I'd
Yeah,
probably end up living here. And it's quite hard to kind of put your finger on it more than just saying, yeah, it was just this sense that that was probably where I would end up. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean when you say that. How how much kind of runway did you have in terms of the decision to move and then moving? Was there kind of a period of time there where you knew it was going to happen and you had a bit of time to plan?
yeah, absolutely. I think it takes a lot longer than you think, but then you also just have to go for it because you feel like you're completely ready to move. So I'd say it was about a year that we were looking into it and making decisions. It was definitely in the back of my mind a lot sooner than that. But yeah, I think it was around a year that we started really kind of researching where we wanted to be. It was very much, honestly, it was Sydney or Melbourne. Whoever gets a job wherever is where we're going. There wasn't
Mm,
much more thought in that. I used to live in Sydney before, but I'd never really explored Melbourne. So we just kind of started researching, applying for visas. It was on that really tricky period where the gates were only opening again to these countries.
mm.
And we knew that it would take a little bit of time anyway. So I guess it bided our time a bit. And yeah, you've done it before and you know all the preparation to get yourself over here takes quite a long time. I think the worst thing has to be canceling all your bills.
Yeah,
You
and
forget
just
about a lot.
you do, and I think just any big move like that. I mean, even if you just move house locally, it's quite a painful experience, and then just kind of supersizing that to moving to the other side of the
Yeah,
world. Yeah, I think unless you've done it's very easy to kind of underestimate actually the time and effort, and as you say, just all the things that you don't even really think about that suddenly you're like, "Oh god, I hadn't even considered that." Like, it's
absolutely. I
yeah, and then
know.
you get here and then it's the whole same thing in reverse of,
Yeah.
"How do I do this?"
Just even
Yeah.
getting a pint of milk that threw me when we first arrived. I didn't realize that they were called milk bars and not off licenses. And everyone's like, why are you trying to go to an off license? So,
Yeah, and the thing that still throws me as well is, and maybe this says a lot about me, that you can't buy wine in the supermarket.
yeah,
Like, I'm so used to just, doing the shop, and then the end part of the shop is wine, and the
yeah,
fact that that doesn't work here either. Yeah, so it's funny all
it's
the little
funny.
differences
Yeah,
that you
you get used
notice.
to.
Yeah. So do you think that sort of period of time of kind of research and I guess looking at the job market from afar
Mm.
and kind of seeing what was out there, do you think that really helped in terms of kind of setting you up for success essentially for once you got here?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of started talking about it to people because I feel if you don't say something, no one's ever going to know. No one can read your mind. So I started kind of in casual conversations speaking about it, and I think the real turning point for me is when I was talking to our account manager. I'd obviously already discussed it with my manager, who was incredibly supportive, and we're still very good friends to this day. Yeah, I spoke to our account manager who basically just said to me, "Look, I've got some good contacts in Australia. I can put you in touch if you're serious."
Mm,
And that was kind of the turning point, really. I started building a bit of a network from the UK and just kind of building these relationships and these friendships. And it also led me to really research what companies I did want to work for and look for the hiring managers and start reaching out to them and just going directly to people because I do feel in Australia it's very much about that community and that
mm.
network. And I didn't have that, and that was terrifying. I honestly, that didn't hit me until I got here. I realized how much amazing support I had in the UK, and you have these advocates for you that you don't even realize at the time. You know, when they always say you want someone to talk highly of you in a room when you're not in the
Mm.
room, something like that. I probably
Yeah,
fudged that one, but
close
and I
enough.
felt like
Yeah.
I felt like I did have that in the UK. I was very lucky, and I was almost a little bit naive to it. So yeah, I just started building relationships from the UK in Australia, and did a lot of preparation of where I wanted to work and what sort of job opportunities I'd be going for.
I think that is such a key point, and I do think and have seen as well that I think often people make the move and they have probably underestimated that. They've probably
Yeah.
underestimated the importance of having that local network. But at the same time, I think it's a little bit of a balance, and maybe it's perhaps more so than that, it's the way in which you go about it. Because I think back in my recruitment days, I would often, receive these messages out of the blue from people saying, "Oh, I'm thinking of moving to Australia. Can you help me?" And I'm like, "That's not going to do it."
Yeah.
No, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but that's not really the right way to go about it. And so I would go back to people and say, you need to be more specific, like, have you got a visa, have you got a starting date, and kind of actually kind of
Yeah.
talk them through it. But I think that's a really key point, that when you've got those things and you're coming, to start to reach out, but to say, to be quite specific about that, and not just, kind of airy fairy messages, but the, I'm moving to Australia on this date, looking to build local network, blah blah blah. And also I think the other side of that is that there's so many people that have done what we've done. English people specifically, there's going to be a huge amount of shared experience there.
Mm.
But then there's also lots of other people who have moved to Australia. So there are so many people that do have that shared experience. And I think that's the other thing when people are looking to reach out to people, to try and find those connections, and try and find someone who does understand what you're going through, because they're going to be so much more likely to help you because they've been in your position, and they know what it's like.
100%. And that's why I'm always the first to put my hand up if someone reaches
Mm,
out to me to support them. But I think it's really key what you said there, Emma. It's the way that you approach it, the way that
yeah.
you approach someone. We're all short of time at the end of the day. You know, time's very precious and everyone's got their own things going on in life. If you're not certain with what you're asking, or if someone has offered time for you, do the preparation, you know.
Yeah.
I'm very blessed to have an incredible mentor in the marketing industry in Australia, and I make sure before we speak every time I've done a lot of the prep work. I've gone off and done my homework, and I say that for everything. If you're reaching out to people that you know are very time poor, be very direct with what you're asking, but also know not to expect anything. You're forming and building a relationship, and honestly, for me, that's what it is. I love people, and I love building these relationships. I'm genuinely interested in that person that I'm talking to. It's not me putting on a facade. I actually want to get to know you, and I'm interested in what you've done or your experiences, and it's a two-way thing, absolutely. So I think it's very important to be observant about how you're asking and not just expect something for nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree, and I think, as you say, that the onus is on you to
Yeah.
do that, and not on the other person. If you're asking for someone's help, then the onus is on you to, yeah, be specific. What does that look like? As you said, be direct, and I also totally agree with your point about it being a two-way street. And I think this is perhaps where people sometimes struggle with the idea of networking, and I think also the word
Mm.
networking doesn't help. Maybe connecting with other people, or
Yeah.
whatever you terminology you want to use. But I think the word in itself can sometimes sound a little bit transactional, and I think
Yeah.
perhaps that's where people can trip up. But I think the antidote to that is exactly what you said. It's genuine curiosity.
Yeah.
It's a two-way street. How can I help you? How can you help me? How can we help each other? What does that, what does that look like? Who can I put you in touch with? It's not just you kind of asking for someone's time. It's a shared knowledge and shared experience.
Yeah, 100%. And it always goes the other way as well. At some point the person that you're talking to, they might need your help on
Mm,
something. I've got from these amazing people I've had in my career that have been incredibly supportive and helped me get some of the roles that I have had. They have then, if they're recruiting, will reach out to me and be like, "Is there anyone that you know in the industry, in the space?" And I always make sure that
mm,
even if I don't know someone, I put it out there, I put a message out there, I support them in some way, I reach out to some of my contacts because, as I say, yeah, it goes both ways, and you kind of retain that relationship and you keep it going, and you never know when something might come from it, but also you don't have to expect something to come from it.
yeah.
Yeah, relationships are all about just building genuine bonds, and you might not get something instantly, but you never know when something will happen or come from it either.
You don't. And the other thing I always think is that I find sometimes people can be a little bit literal sometimes. If I'm connecting with this person, then I'm expecting something from
Yeah.
this person. But actually, the power of a network isn't necessarily in the direct relationships, although they are, of course, important. It's the people that that person knows, and you have no idea who that person
No.
knows. You have no idea all the people and what they do and their network and their etc. And I think sometimes, yeah, it's easy to fall into that trap of being a bit literal of, well, I don't see the connection with this person, or I don't see how, bluntly, I don't see how this person might be able to help me, but it's not actually the point. Did you get that dreaded kind of, lacks local experience feedback when you got here? And if so, how did you overcome that?
Yeah, so I guess it was a mix of things. I came on a working holiday visa, which I know a lot of Brits do come over on. And I have now moved on to kind of like the partner visa, but at the
Mm,
time it just wasn't an option because of the period of time that we were coming over. Um, and I feel like, as well as the lax local experience reaction, it was very much a bit of a, I don't know, barrier having that working
mm,
holiday visa, because you're obviously only, well, as a Brit, you're only allowed to work for a company for 6 months, which
yeah.
by that time you've only started getting to really know your role, right? So I can completely appreciate why businesses are a bit hesitant, and I'm so grateful I was given an incredible opportunity in an Australian company off the bat. Really, that's why I always like advise people to look at contract roles.
Yeah.
Don't just pigeonhole yourself and just look for full-time roles. You never know when a contract role might lead to something anyway. And I kind of found it was more when I was talking to recruiters, rather than getting a direct response from a company, it was often no response from a company, and the recruiter would share the information with me and say, yeah, you don't have experience here, which naively I just thought, coming from London, oh, that's, we're pretty much the same. We London and Melbourne, we we do things the same, so surely it will be absolutely fine. And that's my naivety, and I'm sure a lot of people come over with the same sort of attitude. So it was a real wake up call, probably in a good way though. It was kind of the test that you needed, and it just made me work that much harder to get a role and be that much more appreciative when I did. And yeah, now I'm very fortunate. I have built up a good amount of experience in Australia, and honestly, things do come quite a lot easier when you have got a bit of experience. So it's just landing that first role, I feel, is really really important, and will
Yeah.
put you in good stead. Yeah.
It does, and it's kind of ironic, isn't it? Because it's such a chicken and the egg thing of, oh, you haven't got local experience, but how do I get local experience if no one
Yeah.
will give me a go? And I've heard, oh God, I lost track of over 13 years or so. How many times I've heard people's frustration with
Yeah.
that situation. And on your point with the visas as well, I think it is one of those things. And again, I've had this conversation many times with someone saying, "Oh no, but I want a permanent role. Someone will sponsor
Mm.
me." And yeah, I get it. You want one, but what's the benefit to them?
Yeah.
They don't know you. You don't have experience here. It is going to be challenging, and I think there is such a strong freelance market and certainly
Yeah.
contract markets that you're almost making it harder for yourself by well, you are making it harder for yourself by ignoring that. And I do think certainly in the beginning when you just want to get that first role and just kind of get your foot on the ladder, it's kind of the path of least resistance is going to be the way to go. And yes, it may mean that you have to look for another contract in 6 months, but by that point, you do have local experience. You're not going to get that. You're not going to have to deal with that same hurdle. And also, like you said, you do never know if once you get in there and actually start doing good work and build a good relationship with the organization, at that point they may be open to sponsor you because now they know what you can actually do, whereas from the outside it's probably quite unlikely that's going to happen. But
Like
it's
proving your
yeah,
worth, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it also goes both ways because you get to work with them and you get to see that the role is what they say it is, the culture's what they say it is, and actually, hopefully see that it's a positive place to be. But yeah, it's a real bugbear for, for a lot of people, the local experience thing.
No,
And also
100%.
yeah, I also think the other thing that people sometimes miss with the local experience thing is obviously if you can have that experience in your chosen field in a marketing role,
Mm.
obviously that is the ideal. That's amazing. But if you're struggling to get that, something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
So even if you can get local experience and it's perhaps not in your chosen field, or maybe you can volunteer or do something additionally, at least then you're showing a willingness and you're showing an employer that you think outside of the box, that you're willing to try and make things happen for yourself. So I
Mm.
think that's always worth considering as well as a kind of if the first option isn't going to plan, try try a
I
backup
sort of go
option. Yeah.
4 months, and it was probably one of the best jobs of my life. I loved it. So I'm not opposed to doing that. I think that's really good advice. Yeah.
Was that to get your visa extension?
It was, but I would have stayed there, honestly. If I
Yeah.
didn't want to travel the rest of Australia, I would have stayed there for a good year. It was, yeah, I had a lot of fun.
It's quite a clever I've always thought it's quite a clever way of solving kind of 2 problems at the same
Yeah.
at the same time, and I have also heard a lot of people say that they've really enjoyed it. Pretty tough work, but they've actually
Yeah.
really enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, definitely.
And in terms of your role now, because it's one of the
Mm.
things again that I talk a lot with my clients about is kind of taking control of things for yourself and not just relying on roles that you see advertised or working with a recruiter, although
Mm.
both of those things are still worthwhile doing as well. But what I particularly love about your experience is that you took control of it and you had identified companies that you wanted to work for and sort of started to build relationships there. Talk me through that process. How did you go about it?
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I've managed to land another a dream role in Australia, and I'm count my lucky stars every day that I do work for the company I do now, Sweat. And yeah, basically I did two things. So firstly, I defined my core values. And I think that is actually really important. It wasn't something I'd done previously in the UK, but here I was like, I really want to get sure of what I want. It wasn't what job title I want, it was what values I want from a company. And there was a few things on there that there was a few non-negotiables on there and a few that I would happily negotiate on considering if it was a
Hmm.
role that really suited me. So I got really pointy, I guess, on my values. I wrote them down, I stuck them up, and I made sure I could see them every day. And aside of that, I looked at the companies that did offer these values. And I did a lot of research into the companies that were kind of my dream companies. And I started building relationships and started talking about these companies when, because I knew my contract role was coming to an end. So I guess I
Mhm.
had the luxury of being able to talk about finding a new job. It wasn't a secret to anyone. So I did start, I guess, letting people know these are the kind of aspirations I have for my career, and this is where I see myself. Just general chats, not me just
Yeah,
going up to someone going, "Hey, by the way, this is what I'm looking for."
on the street.
Yeah. Do you know anyone that works for this place? No, I didn't do that. But I did start connecting with people in that company and again forming very genuine relationships. This was not me in any way expecting anything from anyone. I was just building relationships. And I basically started building a relationship with my director in the new company that I was working for.
Mhm.
And yeah, just kind of stayed in contact, was genuinely engaging on his LinkedIn posts and having actual genuine conversations. And nothing, there was no job opportunities at the time, and there's not many opportunities because so many people love working for this company, so it's very few and far between. And I honestly wasn't thinking much of it. But at the time, and talk about divine timing, I couldn't have worked out better. I was basically in the car back home, and I had 2 weeks left at my job. I was about to go over to the UK for an extended break to go to 4 weddings, actually, which was crazy. And I got a message from him a little bit out of the blue saying, "Hey, I know you were interested in working for our company before, and obviously we've kind of stayed in touch. We have a role open that we think you'd be a good fit for. Do you want me to put in a referral?" And I was like taken aback.
Yes.
I didn't expect this. This was after 2 years of maintaining this relationship, honestly, with
Mhm.
no expectations. And then, yeah, I obviously said yes. And I was interviewing for other places at the time as well. And I was incredibly lucky. I landed this role. Obviously, had to put in the work. They weren't going to just hire me just because someone said I sounded good. I had quite an arduous process to get there, but it was the power of networking. It really was. And this was someone I didn't know 2 years ago and have
Yeah.
now built a very close relationship with and got my dream job out of it. So I highly recommend building relationships, and let's call it that and not networking.
Yeah, I agree. I think, yeah, building relationships or connecting with others, it just, yeah, feels more feels more genuine. I love that, and I think it's such an underrated and underutilized way of essentially adding to your job search,
Mm,
because that's ultimately what you're doing. In my experience, and it's something that I talk to my clients about all the time, and I think it's something that logically people understand. They hear the idea and they say, "Yep, I get it." I think the two places where it kind of falls over and people probably don't do it is, one, I think they don't appreciate quite how much time it takes to do that, or they're
yeah,
they're wanting something more immediate,
instant.
particularly if
Mm,
I need a job now, how to kind of make that first reach out. They don't know what to say in that first message, or
yeah.
even, first few messages, but definitely the first one is the barrier. Do you remember what you said? Do you remember roughly kind of how you approached it?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So I approach it very differently depending on the person. So, oh, that's good. This is going to sound really bad. I'm basically a silent stalker for a little bit, but no,
That's the
I'm kind
best
of
way to
getting,
do it, though.
I'm getting to understand them and their personality, and LinkedIn's a really good place for this
Yeah.
because everyone's kind of going down, not everyone, but people are going down
Mm,
the direction of building a personal brand on LinkedIn, and they put up either a networking event that they've been to, or maybe a podcast they've been on, for
mm.
example, or something, and they'll post something, and that's like a starting point, a talking point.
Yeah.
And as I said, it should be a genuine interest in this person and forming a relationship with this person. So I'm pretty sure it was along that kind of line as well, because
Yeah.
this is my genuine approach for everyone. I will see something that captivates me that they've worked on, whether it's an article they've published or I don't know, an event that they've been to or something, and I will start off the conversation with that and kind of put the two things together, like our relevance, and talk about that thing, saying, look, I,
Mm.
I listened to your podcast the other day and I found it really interesting. I just wanted to reach out and say thank you so much for talking about X, Y, and Z, whatever it was. And it's not icky because it's a genuine
Yeah.
interest, and you're
Mm.
showing a genuine interest. And at the end of the day, people appreciate that. They see that you've done the research. And yeah, sometimes you won't get a response, of course, like we've all been there. I've done that and I feel guilty for it. I've had people reach out to me and I've been so busy I haven't managed to
Yeah.
respond. And I will normally, if someone of real interest to me and I'm like, wow, I aspire to know have your career or do some
Mm.
of the things that you've done, or you're in a company that I'm really interested in being at, I will then follow up. And again, if I don't get a response, then you just move on. It's
Yeah.
absolutely fine. Like the only thing you're going to get is either a no or a response,
Yeah.
and there's nothing really wrong in that. And I just think it's about being, as I say, really genuine. And yes, of course, it takes a bit more time, but it also saves you from just blanket messaging
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
It means that you're actually going to be messaging the people that you genuinely want to form relationships with, and I think that that really shows, and people can tell. And honestly, there's a lot of people out there that want to help. I'm one of them. I'm happily going to offer advice if I see that this is a genuine person. I meet up for people with for coffees, especially a lot of Brits that have moved over and just
Mm.
want some advice. I think
It's that shared
is
experience thing again. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And they'll always be in the back of my head if anything comes up. I'll obviously let them know. But I think it's just, yeah, again, being really genuine. I don't think I can
Yeah.
hone on that word enough, but it really is.
Yeah. It's great. It's great advice. And again, I think that's perhaps where some people stumble. I wonder if they're too literal with it.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a strategy to kind of maybe get me a job at some point. So I'm sure someone wouldn't be quite as literal as this, but not a million miles away of, oh, I see you work at X, Y, and Z. I'd really like to work there. Have you got any
Yeah.
jobs available? No, that
Yeah.
is not the way. That is not the way to do it. Nor I've also, heard examples of people just messaging strangers and asking for referrals into organizations that they want to work for. Like, and again, I think this is the stumbling block with this particular approach. It takes time. It
Yeah.
takes effort. There is
Yeah.
no way, there is no hack, there is no way to kind of circumnavigate that. You have to put in the effort, you have to put in the time, and like you say, it has to be genuine,
Mm.
and there isn't a way around that. I don't think, or if there is, I certainly haven't discovered it. Um, and I think that's sometimes where people, to be fair, choose not to do it because it
Yeah.
does take time and it does take effort. And like you say, LinkedIn, it seems to be very kind of trendy to just bash LinkedIn these days, but there is just so much value in it.
Yeah.
Like the ability to be able to connect with people that you would in real life never be able to do. It is just not to be underestimated in my experience. And were it not for a platform like LinkedIn, it'd be very difficult for you to have done that. I guess you could still
Mm.
hear someone on a podcast, you might be able to find an email or something, but to just be able to send someone a message, the platform has made that already so much easier for you. You just have
Yeah.
to do a bit of research, like you say, put a bit of effort in, and also be a bit vulnerable, I guess, to kind of put
Yeah.
yourself out there. But I think what's particularly clever about your approach there, by making the initial message about the other person and about, I saw you on X, Y, and Z. I loved what you were
Mm.
saying. All humans like like compliments
Yeah.
and like people saying nice things about them. That person is so much more likely to respond to you because A, you've been genuine, B, they
Yeah.
can see you've done your research, and C, it's a bit of a nice kind of ego massage, isn't it? Of oh, this person, oh, they heard what I said and they liked it. Like it, gives them a bit of the warm and fuzzies. So
100%.
yeah, I think it is. I understand why people kind of get a little bit stuck on doing it, but I just think it's
Mm.
such an underutilized approach. So good on you for for doing it and putting the effort in.
Thank you. And I always say you're future proofing yourself as
You
well.
are, yeah,
Yeah. And that's kind of, you never know what's going to happen. We've all seen the world kind of collapse in front of
yeah,
our eyes over the last few years, and I think it's more important than ever to build those genuine connections and
yeah.
to, yeah, I guess sometimes maybe it feels a bit icky to self promote and just yeah, you're protecting yourself and showing what value you can offer, and I think that's just key in this
Mm.
job market at the moment.
Absolutely, and it's something I bang on about probably ad nauseum, but it is something that you've kind of got to build into your maybe not weekly, but certainly probably monthly routine,
Mm,
because you don't want to get to the scenario where perhaps you have your role's been made redundant, or you are kind of actively looking, and then oh no, I haven't put time into building relationships and trying to kind of suddenly fast track that. You need it to be able to, was going to say fall back on. I'm not sure that's the right phrase, but you already need it there. You can't suddenly
mm.
go, oh, how am I going to do this in in a month's time? It does take years really to do it properly. So find ways to kind of invest the time, even if it's just blocking it out in your calendar, you know, once a month, or making sure that you're, I don't know, reaching out to however many people it might be on a weekly basis. But yeah,
Yeah,
don't wait until you need it, because it will probably be a little bit too late at that point. You need to do a lot of the work up front.
yeah.
What are the other things, or what are the other activities that have kind of made a difference for you, do you think? I mean, certainly, obviously, the focus on building those relationships
Mm.
and has been key, and you've obviously invested a lot of time and effort in doing that. Anything else that you would kind of add to the list of activities that are worthwhile doing and that will ultimately, you feel, kind of move the needle for people?
Yeah, so I'd say there's been 3 things, and obviously we've already touched on 2 of them. So networking 100%, or building relationships as we
Building
want to call it.
relationships.
Number 2, I'd say building, or I'm actually gonna say having the courage to build a personal brand on LinkedIn because
Mm.
it can feel pretty scary.
Yeah.
And number 3, I would say is asking questions. And I know that's gonna sound a really strange one, but I feel like that's really supported my career growth as well. If I kind of circle back to, oh, sorry about the terminology. I'm in the business mind now. But if I circle back to the LinkedIn and personal branding, I think for me, I've just posted, I don't really know where it came from. I think I saw a post and I saw some other people that I've now made friends with. Actually, 2 of my very close friends in Australia came from LinkedIn, which is so strange. So it's not even just professional relationships, it is personal
Yeah.
relationships as
Yeah.
well. And I just saw the kind of success that they were having. And I'm not meaning like vanity metrics. I'm not talking about likes or engagement on your post. Absolutely, that's great. Of course, we all love it. Let's not deny it. But it was the other opportunities that they were seeing from building a personal brand on LinkedIn.
Mm.
And yeah, people reaching out to them. And I had this when I was freelancing for a little bit in between jobs. Because I was posting about it, I had companies, brands, people coming to me asking for work because I was being a bit more vocal about it on LinkedIn, and I'd
Mm.
already done the work of building a personal brand, that it seemed a lot more natural. So I think that's been really key to my career, absolutely. When I say number 3, asking questions, I'm talking more about in your general kind of workplace and in your
Mm.
network. I am just a big believer, and maybe, and this is not something I tell a lot of people, but now the whole world's going to know, I'm actually dyslexic. So
Oh, me
for
too.
me, oh, congrats. It's a superpower. I'm not that vocal about it normally,
No,
but
me
I
neither,
feel like,
actually.
yeah, it's interesting, right? But I feel like it's really supported that idea of not having to be right, because for quite a long time in my school career
Yeah.
I was definitely wrong. So I think I kind of got over that fear, and I ask questions. If I don't know the answer, I will ask a question.
Mm.
And I feel like that's got me so much further. I think there's a bit of a ego around it of always having to be right and knowing the answer, but you don't develop by doing that, because you never find out the actual answer and you never grow. So I've lived like my career is, if I don't know something, ask 100%. I always do. And that even goes for opportunities as well. I was kind of in the digital marketing space. I had an interest in the email marketing space. And I spoke to people in my company that were in the email marketing space. And I asked lots of questions, and I developed, and I got that opportunity. Um, so I just think, I know it sounds so simple, but asking questions when you either don't know the answer or when you're curious about something
Mm.
is really key to career growth. And it's elevated my career, and I'm grateful that I kind of learned that ability at a very young age, that it's not bad to ask questions, and you don't need to be right. You don't.
No. No, I totally agree with you, and it's really interesting to hear you say, as you say, it does sound simple, but at the same time, a lot of people don't do it. And I
Mm,
think particularly on the, kind of asking questions about opportunities, for me, I think it comes back to that. You've got to advocate for yourself.
yeah,
No one else is going to do it for you. You
yeah.
might be very lucky and have a, super supportive manager who will, ask some of those questions for you. But
Mm,
even then, it's actually not up to them. It is up to you. It is your career. It is up to you to advocate for yourself. And I think, often hear things, or often hear people say things like, oh, but they're not supporting my personal development, or there's been no training offered, and my follow-up question to that is, well, what did you ask for?
yeah.
Oh, nothing. Well, the onus is on you to ask for it, not to wait for someone to offer it to you. So I
Mm.
love that, and I think she say it's a very simple thing to say, but the execution of it is something that, in my experience, doesn't actually happen all that often. And it's interesting to hear you sort of link that, I guess, ability to just be able to kind of say, actually, sorry, hang on, I don't quite understand that. Could you explain that to me? To being dyslexic, because I'm pretty sure I do that too, and I've never linked it to that just asking, because I don't know, or I don't understand, or it just doesn't
Mm.
just doesn't compute in my head for some reason. So that's, yeah, that's really interesting. I'm going to start noticing whether that's why I might do it now.
I love that.
And interesting your point about LinkedIn as well, because I think, and I've experienced it too, like in the beginning, it's super scary. You kind of,
Mm.
putting your thoughts out there, and particularly as a dyslexic person, not just putting your thoughts out there, but your words, because
The
invariably I've
spelling.
spelt something wrong, even if, I'm grammarly, I'm all the things, but if it's not a spelling mistake, it's the wrong word or something, then it won't pick it up, and I just can't see it. So
Mm.
just kind of getting over the fact that it doesn't have to be perfect, and
Yeah.
it 9 times out of 10 won't be perfect, because unfortunately that's just the reality for me, but it doesn't have to be. And the
No.
fact that it's not is actually probably, in a weird way, a more authentic expression. It is something that I've said, it's my words, it's my writing. It's not something that's just been, chucked out from ChatGPT. There probably wouldn't be any mistakes if it had. But it's an interesting one, isn't it? Like, how did you get over that sort of initial hump of like fear of, like, I don't know, judgment, or putting yourself out there, whatever terminology.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually funny. I was watching something this morning, and I've seen this word come up quite a lot, or this phrase come up, and they talk about cringe mounting and being
I
on
like
top of
that.
cringe mountain. Yeah, it's really good, and it's so true. So once when you start, you're at the bottom of said cringe mountain, and every single post and every time that you're putting yourself out there, you're kind of moving up the ranks, I guess. But it's like that with everything. I mean, as I said, I'm also an artist when I'm not marketing. And I remember when you first started drawing, I'm not going to be sending that to any gallery. So, but it was every little step you get better and you get braver. And the first post is always going to feel weird and icky. And honestly, to me, it's come back to me now. There was a challenge that was put up on LinkedIn by a very successful marketer that I follow, and I thought, you know what, Becca, why not? Like, just do it. What's the harm? Do it for a month. Post. I only post once a week, honestly, and the growth I've seen in posting once a week is incredible. And yeah, I just make sure every post I offer real value. I've got my kind of pillars. I know as a marketer, you kind of
Yeah.
stick to what you know, but they're very rough pillars. It's sort of about my move to Australia because I know that provides value for people because there's other people out there
Yeah.
wanting to do it. And then I talk about email marketing and life cycle marketing and offer like advice and tips. I've been in the space now for around a decade, and I feel like I can offer some actual value in that space. And I just make sure every post is kind of hitting those few things that I want to talk about, and I make sure that I'm putting actual value out. And if it's something I want to read, then I know I should post it. And that's
Mm.
what I'm always thinking. If it's something I'm interested in, like I'm really interested in people sharing their career stories, and I'm sure you are too from what your
Yeah.
podcast is about. So I want to talk about that because it's something I'm interested in. And yeah, the first post, the first time you engage with other people is going to feel weird because it's not natural. We're not put on this planet. I don't know. I don't want to generalize, but I feel more so as females,
I think
we're
so.
not used to
No.
speaking about ourselves in that way,
Yeah.
and it can feel a bit weird. So it's always going to feel weird. But remember that every single person started at that point. I've followed some amazing creatives in the space for a while now, and I've seen them go from strength to strength, and that's what it is. And it's yeah, it's climbing that cringe mountain really, and one
Yeah.
day you will potentially reach the top, or you'll be further up, and you'll look back and you'll be like so proud of yourself that you've put the work in. And I think that's just yeah, that's really key.
I haven't come across that phrase before. I love that. And it is true, like, it does feel that way, and I'm very active on LinkedIn too, and, have been through the kind of the journey of starting and getting used to it, and even then, occasionally you sort of look back on something you wrote and you have that moment of like, "Oh
Yeah.
god, no, that wasn't maybe wasn't the one," but who cares? At the end of the day, it's a journey, and you've just gotta, like you say, you've kind of got to start somewhere. And I think your point about the pillars is really kind of key
Mm,
as well, and kind of tapping into, what are the experiences that I have that are actually gonna resonate. And I
yeah.
think your other point on kind of sharing value is really, really key. And occasionally, I'll have I'd have a sort of a Trello board system for mine where
No.
if I'll just kind of have an idea and I'll just make a note of it, and then I might come back and flesh it out later. And sometimes I look at the notes and I think, nah, that's don't know what I was thinking on that day. That is never that is never going to be something that one can go. But it's just, yeah, it's just kind of useful, I think, to have that sort of framework, and that process
Mm,
around it does really help.
yeah. 100%.
You've shared so many great kind of tips and advice already, but as a final thought, Becca, and it's always the final question here, is there one thing that you know now that you wish you knew then?
Yeah. So for me, it's you're never truly ready, so just go for it anyway. And I think I spent a lot of my career kind of hiding away because I didn't feel ready or good enough, and realized actually nobody does. I'm pretty sure every single person that you speak to in any position never feels 100% every single day or even any day maybe. So yeah, it's just learning to do it anyway. And that's what I say with building personal branding on
Mm.
LinkedIn. That's what I say with your career journey. And that's what I say with moving to Australia. All my friends tell me how brave I am, but I didn't feel truly ready. I was shaking the day I put my foot on the plane and landed in Melbourne. And still, most days I wake up thinking, "Wait a sec, am I am I ready for this?" So yeah, it's just doing it anyway. And the other thing they always say is the grass is always greener where you water it, and I believe that's very true. So that if there's something that you want, the only way that you're kind of going to get there is by investing time in it. So it's important to just do that.
It's so true, and I absolutely love the point about just doing it anyway, because I think sometimes I think people who see other people do things think, "Oh, they
Hmm.
must be well, they must have it all figured out. They must,
Yeah,
have this kind of, perfect internal monologue that that makes them able to do these things." And I think that realization of it's not the case at all. They're actually just, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. They're not
yeah,
feeling it. They're just kind of pushing through it and finding a way to make the things happen. So awesome advice. Thank you
thank
so
you.
much, Becca. I really appreciate you taking the time, and so cool what you've done. It's really awesome to see just the level of kind of ownership that you've taken over it, because I think, like I
Thank
said,
you.
if you don't advocate for yourself, no one's going to do it for you. So I
Yeah,
think that is just what you just have to take ownership for it, and kind of take responsibility for it, and make it happen for yourself, and to see, what you've been able to do thus far, because I'm sure there is much more to come. But yeah, it's really awesome, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk through it and share what you've learnt so far.
thank you so much. It's been great to chat, and I love what you do too. So can't wait to see more.
Thank you.